What's up, Bug Doug with D&E in the Garage? I have a really interesting little nugget of Jeep history, of automotive history that I want to share with you today. It centers around the picture that was the thumbnail for this video. Now, if you weren't sure what you were looking at, that's okay. I wasn't at first either. What this picture appears to be showing is a first-gen Grand Cherokee, a ZJ, but like a Dodge version. The front clip kind of looks like a second-gen Dodge truck. It's got one-piece headlights. The door handles are different. Some of the lines are a little bit different. And if you are like me, when you first saw that picture, you said, all right, man, so what? Somebody photoshopped a ZJ to look like a Dodge version of a ZJ. No problem. People do that all the time. Look at the Broncos that people are always photoshopping off of Raptors and putting them in the forums, trying to pretend like it's the next-gen Bronco. Here's the thing, though. That picture, when I found it on the internet, it actually came with a description that raised more questions than it really answered. The description for that photo, it said, this is a picture of a Dodge Grand Cherokee, and the story goes like this. When Chrysler acquired Jeep from AMC, they weren't sure that the planned ZJ was going to be able to be sold on the Jeep name. They weren't sure if the Jeep dealer network was strong enough. They weren't sure if the Jeep brand could support another vehicle. So they were going to give the ZJ 1 year. If it didn't sell well, they were going to kill the Jeep Grand Cherokee and give it to Dodge. And it was going to be a Dodge Grand Cherokee. Now, this story did not really sit well with me. It just didn't make sense. And I'll tell you why. I'm a bit of a Jeep historian, as you know, and it's very common knowledge that the reason Lee Iacocca wanted the Jeep brand from AMC was because of the ZJ. He saw the plans for the ZJ. This is the man, the genius, who had just revolutionized the family car market with the minivan in 1984. He'd saved the Chrysler Corporation with the K-Car platform. He knew that this ZJ, this smaller, more compact unibody daily driver-ish SUV was the future. He wanted Jeep for the ZJ. He wanted the ZJ as a Chrysler product. Now, it doesn't make sense that a man who had such confidence in the Jeep brand and had so much confidence in this specific vehicle would question whether or not it could be sold. So, I did some digging. I was trying to figure out, where is this picture from? Because if you look at it, it doesn't really look photoshopped, at least not to me. I've tried to find some angle, some way that it's photoshopped. If you look, it looks like a real photo. There's even in the back corner what looks like a blue 93 ZJ. I did a bunch of research into this photo, and it led me to a very interesting little-known event in Jeep Chrysler automotive history, an argument that took place internally within Chrysler. Now, to understand this story, we first need to understand some ZJ history and where Dodge was sitting, the Dodge brand, in the late 80s looking towards their future in the 90s, all right? Let's start with the ZJ. The ZJ was very much 100% an AMC designed vehicle. In 1985, AMC owns Jeep. They are partnering with a company named Renault. It's a French car company, and they want to work on the successor to the XJ line. The XJ is only 1 year old there, but they already want to start planning what's going to replace it. And if you think about it, the ZJ gets released in 93. The XJ was released in 84. A 9-year production run isn't crazy. That's not short. So they come up with the project code XJC. They bring in a bunch of designers in 85 to try to figure out what the next generation Cherokee is going to look like. The person who does the best is a guy named Larry Shinoda. No relation to Mike Shinoda, but you might remember him from, or know him from, the work he's done on Corvettes. Very famous designer. Fun little side story, they ended up paying him half of what he was asking for the designs because they said the designs were crap. And then when in 89, when the concept for the Grand Cherokee came out, Shinoda raised his hand and said, so those are my designs. And there was a bit of conflict between Shinoda and Chrysler. And I don't know that it was ever truly resolved, but most people agree that Larry Shinoda designed the first Grand Cherokee, the ZJ. So the ZJ is designed in '85. They start perfecting it, AMC does. It's designed to replace the Cherokee and the Wagoneer. It was meant to be the middle ground between the Wagoneer and the Cherokee so that they did not need both. Around this time, Renault wants to get out from underneath AMC. AMC is not very profitable. Jeep is the only part of AMC that's selling anything right now. So Renault wants to get out of that partnership. They're looking to liquidate their stake in AMC, and what ends up happening is Chrysler agrees to buy the Jeep brand from AMC. AMC ends up going under, which is sad but inevitable. They weren't a brand for the more modern world. It just is what it is. So Chrysler buys the Jeep brand from AMC, and they're bringing them in-house, and these plans, like I said, Chrysler knew about the plans for the ZJ. That's the reason they bought Jeep. So they finally, in '87, the deal was finalized, and Dodge, the Dodge wing, goes, oh, cool, you guys just bought Jeep? Those plans for that ZJ, we'll take them. Great, we'll make that a Dodge. And Jeep raised their hand and said, frig off, Barb, you will not take our new SUV. And so this little bit of infighting starts within Chrysler. Jeep, obviously, the Jeep brand wants to keep the vehicle they've been developing, and Dodge wants that for themselves. Now let's look at Dodge, where they're sitting and why they would want this and why this fight was a thing. All right, in the late 80s, looking towards the 90s, Dodge has just revolutionized the family car market, signed the death warrant for the family station wagon with the minivan. The minivan's the future. They hit that market. They're first there. They're riding high on that. They have their K-Car platform, which saved their brand, and they're looking forward to transitioning from K-Cars to the 90s lineup of sedans, the Intrepid, the Neon. All right, they're looking forward to the '92 release of the Viper, where they're going to have the sports car market locked up, their Corvette killer. Their first-gen trucks are doing incredible. The second-gen Dodge pickup trucks are about to be released. They're wildly popular. Dodge is feeling good about how the 90s are going to go for them. The only thing they're missing is an SUV, a small SUV. They stopped selling the Ram Charger in the United States in 1985. Fun fact that I found out while I was researching this video: even though the Ram Charger, the second-gen Ram Charger, ceased sales in the United States in '85, they kept selling it in foreign markets until 2001. And there's actually a third-gen Ram Charger that we never even got to see. And it was only sold in Mexico from '99 to '01, and it's very much the bridge between the old, massive, full-frame Ram Charger and the 1998 Dodge Durango. It really bridges that gap, and I truly wish we had gotten it here in the States. Very cool vehicle. The point is, they stopped selling their only SUV, and it wasn't even a modern SUV. The Ram Charger is very much an old 70s style SUV that can't survive in the 90s and beyond. And so they're looking to fill that market segment. At this time in the late 80s, there's a ton of buzz in the automotive industry that Ford is about to release something major, something that's going to be a game changer. That, of course, is their 1991 release of the Explorer, which, if you think about it, just as a side note, the Explorer is really the main competitor to the Grand Cherokee its entire life. Right? The Grand Cherokee is the end-all, be-all for SUVs in the 90s. The only thing that comes close is going to be the Ford Explorer. So Dodge is shaking in their boots a little bit because this is a market segment that they can do nothing in. So they say, cool, our parent company just bought that little company. They have an unreleased, somewhat produced SUV. Give us that. And the two sides are going back and forth. Long story short, they are asked, the head of each department, Joe Cappy for Jeep and Rob Boltz for Dodge, are asked to make presentations arguing their case that they will present directly to Lee Iacocca. At the end of the day, Iacocca determines, yes, the Jeep Grand Cherokee will be a Jeep product. It goes on in 1989. It is debuted as a concept vehicle, which looks very, very similar to the production vehicle, which would be released in '93. And it's an incredible smash hit. The Grand Cherokee was an immediate success. In its first year, it sold 250,000 units. That's crazy. It immediately made the Jeep brand viable to Chrysler. It pulled Chrysler's butt out of the fire a little bit as they were as they always are, struggling a little bit, making some bad decisions. The Grand Cherokee starts a long tradition of Jeep saving Chrysler. And I want to look a little bit at why it was such a success, because I think it's all a lot of little pieces that came together to make the Grand Cherokee success. First of all, it's just a good vehicle, all right? Car reviewers of the time compared the handling of a new Grand Cherokee in '93 to a BMW 525i or a Mercedes 300 CE. Now, I've never driven either of those two German cars, and I've never driven a brand new off-the-lot 93 ZJ. I've driven 20-year-old ZJs, and they do not handle like a Mercedes. But apparently in 93, the tech that went into the ZJ was just not there in other vehicles. So you've got a comfortable, responsive, fun-to-drive vehicle with a really good engine. This is super important. When Chrysler bought AMC and they added their fuel injection to the 4-liter, they saved the 4-liter. The Renix 4-liter is old tech. That kind of stuff was originated in the 60s and was still alive in the 80s in the early Cherokees and Wranglers and CJs. They saved the 4-liter, and as a side note, when Chrysler saved the 4-liter, it could have very easily gone out in the early 90s. They would have developed some kind of 3.5-liter V6 that they would have put in the Grand Cherokee and Wranglers and stuff. If they had done away with the 4-liter, they would have done away with the Cherokee then too. They're not going to retool the Cherokee for this hypothetical new 3.5 V6 when they kind of wanted to kill it off anyway. It was supposed to go away after the debut of the Grand Cherokee, but the plants were already set up and people were still buying them, so they said, screw it, let both cars exist. And it did in fact exist for another 7 years, till 2001. So the ZJ is a success because of how good a car it is, but also because of the climate that it came out in. All right, in the early 90s, SUVs were on the up and up. People were realizing, hey, they are viable as commuter cars, they're viable as fun vehicles, they're viable as dailies. They're not just the workhorses that the Broncos, Blazers, and Ram Chargers were of the past. They were either a workhorse or a mean off-road lifted beast, but you didn't drive it to work every day. That's changing with the 1991 Explorer, with the 93 ZJ, to a much lesser degree, the 94 and 95 respective releases of the Toyota RAV4 and Honda CR-V. In no way in the same class with the Grand Cherokee or Explorer, but it's helping to normalize the SUV on the landscape. Additionally, in 1992, the GMC release of the Typhoon, which is a GMC Jimmy, essentially with a Grand National engine. It's got a turbo V6 in it. Again, just kind of illustrating the public's new love affair with the SUV, and the Grand Cherokee comes in right in the middle of this and is a smash hit. And it's kind of sad for Renault because they got out of AMC. They did a lot of the pre-work for this thing, and then they bailed on the project. If they'd stuck around, it would have been pretty profitable for them. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Now, back to the picture. I've said all this to explain the environment and explain a possible explanation for this picture, because the truth is I couldn't find a definitive answer. Now, the most likely answer, if we can agree that this is not photoshopped, is that this was a concept vehicle built by the Dodge team based on the ZJ plans from AMC to illustrate to Lee Iacocca and Bob Lutz, the heads of Chrysler, hey man, this is what it would look like if you give it to us. They did away with the two-piece headlights. Obviously, it's got a Dodge grille, some other elements. The fenders are different. The wheel wells are different. Jeep has very traditional trapezoidal wheel wells. They were rounded out a little bit for the Dodge version. That's most likely what this is, but I can't find definitive proof of that. I can't find somebody that says, yes, this is for the 1987 meeting, blah, blah, blah. That's why it exists. It leads me to the question, does this vehicle, did it ever exist? And if so, does it still exist? Is this in a storage facility somewhere in Detroit that'll end up in a museum someday? I hope so. I hope so. And unfortunately, even though we don't know the origin of this, it's still a really interesting story. The argument, the infighting, Dodge wanting the Grand Cherokee, that's all documented. That's all true. We just don't know where this picture comes from. Is this something from Chrysler? Is this something a fan made? Is it a really good Photoshop? I don't know. If you guys do know, I would love to know. If you got any information on this picture or more information on this story, by all means, leave me a comment down there in the squawk boxes, because I find it very interesting. Additionally, let's explore explore the two timelines. What do you think? I personally like the Jeep timeline. I don't know that the Grand Cherokee would have survived to today if it had remained a Dodge vehicle. I think in '98 when they came out with the Durango, which was obviously a response to not getting the Grand Cherokee, would they still have created the Durango? Would they have replaced the Grand Cherokee with the Durango? I don't know where Grand Cherokee would have gone on the Dodge timeline, but in our timeline, I love where it went. I'm sitting here in a 2001 Grand Cherokee. This vehicle existing is a direct result of Jeep getting to keep the ZJ. And as a Jeep guy whose favorite Jeeps are Grand Cherokees, that is a positive thing to me. But let me know what you think. Which timeline do you think is more enticing? And what do you think might have happened to the Grand Cherokee on the Dodge timeline? All right. Now, that's all I've got on this. I very much want to know what you guys think. Leave us that comment down there in the squawk boxes. If you want to head over to Facebook, I'm going to put this picture up there so that you can examine it for yourself and let us know. Do you think it's a Photoshop? Do you think it looks like a concept vehicle? Maybe you know exactly what it is and I just couldn't find it out myself. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.